Welcome back to On the Ball, the video podcast series from the Vanderbilt Sports and Society Initiative. I'm Andrew Maraniss, and I'm really excited to have two good friends of mine on the show today, Christie Hauck and Pat Toomay, who were both members of the last Vanderbilt team to beat Alabama here in Nashville in 1969, the year before I was born, guys. So I've always heard a lot about that game.
Maybe that you were born.
A memorable game in history, and thankfully we can no longer say it's the last time we beat Alabama here in Nashville, but thanks to you both for coming on the show.
You bet, Andrew.
You love to do it.
All right, and so I want to talk to you about the game on Saturday and also memories of the time you beat Alabama here. So let's start with Saturday. Christie, you live here in Nashville. I know you come to most of the games, home and road. Where were you? Who were you with? What were your expectations coming into the game on Saturday?
Well, my wife and I, Melissa, we've had season tickets for 100 years, and we got new seat this year. We got seats in the new north end zone, terrace level, first row. We're right by the upright of the goalposts, and when they raise the net for the extra point, we can grab the net. I mean, we're right there. And you have to remove your drinks from the counter when they kick an extra point, because the net comes back into and knocks over the drinks. So we're that close and we're up high. So we have a great vantage point to watch the game. And so we had a great time Saturday, particularly at the end of the game when we filmed the massive rushing the field and then taking the goalpost down. And then they brought the goalpost down by the corner where we sit, and they had to pause. There was some confusion about how to get a 50-foot wide goalpost through a 10-foot wide door. I'm not sure how they did it, but they were on Broadway momentarily, and that was it.
That's so, right.
it was the greatest Vanderbilt sporting event, obviously, many of us have ever seen. Certainly for us, it was great. It was just a great afternoon and evening.
Oh, that's awesome. And Pat, I think you represent a segment of former players who aren't here in Nashville, but were following the game around the country. I know you live out in New Mexico. How were you able to follow the game on Saturday night?
Well, there was a feed that updated every few minutes. I didn't have the ESPN. I couldn't see it. I couldn't see the actual game, but I was getting this feed out of the stadium and time left and what was happening. And I thought, and so I just sat here for an hour and a half watching that feed, and I thought that they're going to do it. They're going to do it. They're going to do it. And Pavia, he's a New Mexico kid. With he's played for multiple schools, and that he ended up there was interesting. And he's a gamer, and he always has been. But he's played all over New Mexico. He was at New Mexico State. He was at JC's here and there. And I guess reminded me of Doug Matthews from back in the day when I think he was the first JC guy we brought in who really made a huge difference. And he was from, Oklahoma A&M, and he made a difference for the team and the prospect. And I feel Pavia is doing the same thing. He has a kind of spirit that is rare. I don't know if, somebody says for Aguiar, I think he mentioned that he only has, the rest of the season at the eligibility, there, which is unfortunate for us fans. But things have changed a lot since we were in school playing football in terms of who they can get. Clark Lee, uh, what a I watched his presser afterwards and his talk to the, he was crying. He was, where did he come from and how did he get there? And I was thrilled with the whole thing, the game plan, the players, how he dealt with them. So it was interesting to me in many ways.
No, for sure. Yeah, you're right. Pavia has such an energy and spirit and confidence. Um, Christie, you mentioned this was the greatest moment you've seen. I felt the same way. I'm still feeling just giddy about it, like today, and you just want to build on it, and make it more, stack more of those types of memories on it. And so you're saying you sit in the north end zone, so the fourth down touchdown pass right down the middle of the field must have come right at you and Melissa.
Well, it did, Andrew, but one of the benefits of the north end zone is they now have a lounge and a bar. I just happened to be in the bar at the time, but I saw it on TV in the bar.
Christie.
It's an all-you-can-eat buffet. I wasn't down there boozing it up. So
Okay.
I did see the touchdown, but I wasn't in the seat. But anyway, it was a great touchdown.
It sure was.
Where we were in and out of we were standing there actually with Mark Carter and his wife when they scored, but that used to be the section for the Letterman, the ground level of the new north end zone, which sold out immediately. You couldn't even get seats in. It used to be free for the Letterman for several years, so we'd seen that view before, but it got taken away, as many things have.
Well, let's flash back 55 years ago, 1969. Vanderbilt is 0-3, Alabama's 3-0, ranked in the top 20, and they come in here for this game. Pat, what do you remember about, let's not even talk about the game yet, but what an opportunity to play against Bear Bryant and Alabama meant to you guys back in those days?
I think we dreaded it in a certain way because they were such a force. But as Kenny Stabler repeatedly reminded me when we played and roomed together in Oakland with the Raiders in '77, he was big. We were very close because he and I were the only SEC guys on the team, and okay. We would go over these games. And, the Tide team was, it wasn't a great team that year. Kenny wasn't there. He'd already gone on, but, they were 6-5 that year, 2-1, 2-4 in the conference with Scott Hunter, Pete Gilliba, Samples at guard, and with Danny Ford at tackle. Lurking around in there. So it wasn't a strong Bama team that we beat, but it was Bama. And so it didn't really matter. Johnny Musso was there in Dallas. That game came up often in a teasing way with Gene Stallings, who played for Bear and ended up a Dallas secondary coach after getting shit canned as head coach at Texas A&M. Because Landry liked and admired Gene, he had a special needs child, and he was really down at that moment. One of the really funny things was that Gene had never coached African Americans, and he comes to Dallas and he's made the secondary coach, and he's got his charges are Cornell Green, Mel Renfro, and Herb Adderley, who had come down to Dallas after a stint in Green Bay. And the middle linebacker was Leroy Jordan, also the Tide stalwart. But he helped everybody, helped the unit gel, and was good to be there. He held nobody could really believe in that environment, Cowboy, that Vandy could ever beat Bama under any circumstances. So it ricocheted on after those years. I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, carried with you through your pro career. That's crazy.
Absolutely. And because Stallings had that group of DBs when I was a rookie, Charlie Waters had come in from Clemson as a third round pick, and Cliff Harris was a free agent from Ouachita Baptist College in Arkadelphia, Arkansas. They were secondary guys too. So Stallings let Herb and those guys do whatever they want. He focused everything on Charlie and Cliff and just ran them ragged out of it. So that whole thing was really interesting and fun to see. And Gene was really down when he came. He was broken, really, when Landry gave him a chance.
Okay.
So this thing just ricochets on.
Christie, what do you remember about, leading up to that game, or just in general, what was the environment around the team? You getting off to an 0-3 start, and then Alabama's coming in. Did you see this as an opportunity to really turn things around? What was the mindset of the team coming into that game?
Well, I think it was too late to turn things around when you're 0-3. So,
yeah, I think it was. Yeah, exactly.
But I think Bill Pace did a real good job of preparing us for every game to think we could win. So every game, because they did a good job of scouting and preparing us for what we were going to see. So we just all bought into we can win every game. We can. And unfortunately, the week before, we had all watched the game where Alabama beat Ole Miss, and I'm looking at our program for the Alabama game, and our sports information guy Boo Odom said it was the greatest football game ever played in college football, and Vanderbilt's about to see the greatest quarterback that Alabama's ever seen that have made already. This is Scott Hunter, who's already made people forget about Joe Namath. And this is who we're facing. And Johnny Vaught, the coach at Ole Miss, said this was the greatest Alabama team he'd ever seen. Well, he'd been there for 100 years and played every Alabama team. So what are we supposed to do with all this information from our sports information director?
Collapse.
I think we were just loose for the game. That's what I wrote in my diary. We were just so loose. And I did read where we put in a new defense again for Scott Hunter. I can't remember that. But apparently we did, and it worked.
Right.
So the buildup was, big on one end, but we didn't, by that point, when we had been massacred by Michigan.
Right.
We Army, horrible Army, and then North Carolina, terrible.
Up there, yeah.
It was embarrassing, and we'd come off the '68 team, which we were now going to lead us. We were going to go toward the national championship, and we were 0-3. But we switched offenses too that game. We switched so that had a lot to do with it. But Alabama had come off that game against Ole Miss, and I don't blame them. You're riding high, just like Alabama this week, coming off the Georgia game. And then after Vanderbilt, they were playing LSU. So why are you worried about an 0-3 Vanderbilt team?
Exactly.
We kind of made it at the right time, and they're reading their press clippings, and then we changed our offense and defense prior to that game. So what was the previous? You said you don't remember, but do you remember anything about what changed?
Well, we went we either went to an I formation or we went from an I formation.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So we
How about
went to
defensively?
an I formation, I think.
Yeah. And what'd you do on defense that was different?
Well, we started covering people. That was one.
That's always a good thing.
More zone, I think. We were slow white guys, and I think we put in. I forgot what we put in. Some I can't remember out there. I know we went more toward like a cover of a victory defense of sorts, where we spread out and went deeper, and at least that's my recollection.
Well, there are
up front didn't change much. It was a 5-3 or something. I was a stand-up defensive end at 250. I was playing at 215.
215. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I played both basketball and football when I went there, and I had to choose after freshman year. So I was basketball weight. I was 6'5", and the basketball program was full of 6'5" guys, but I couldn't shoot from out. There weren't that many 6'5" guys playing inside. You had Snake Grace and Steve Turner was 7'3", but I was playing this outside linebacker position on those days, and you got to learn to play the option and slide down the thing, force the pitch, and all that. And then I gained 30 pounds when I got drafted. So when I went to the pros, I was about 245, 250, which really upset Bobby Proctor and some of those guys because they wanted me to be that size there.
Right.
So there was So did we.
I skipped the weight training and all that. I was a bad actor.
Well, we didn't have a weight room. We had isometrics.
That's right.
You push against the wall to build.
Right.
Is that true?
That's true.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We didn't have a weight room. We had a room.
Right, with isometrics.
Free weights. No, we had one universal machine where you could go they had 4 benches on. You could go around the 4 different stations.
Right.
You could have gone to the YMCA and we would have been national champions.
That's right. When I had a split scholarship, when basketball season started, I was gone because the freshmen had to stay out there and meet for the varsity, who they weren't too great either, if you look back a few years. And so I just went to the basketball program, which is its own issues, because I was Perry Wallace's freshman year too, and Godfrey Dillard, and going through all that was what Perry had to suffer through. And that was an experience unto itself. Not to mention knee surgery from Pinky Lipscomb. Which was
that was a significant moment in your life that you've written about. But you both, thinking back to this past Saturday's game, there are a lot of key defensive plays, forcing a fumble, a pick six.
It's unbelievable.
You guys both made big defensive plays back in '69. Pat, I think you had a number of sacks. Christie, you had a big interception. What do you remember about making those plays that day? I'll start with you, Christie.
Well, one thing I do remember is we had Alabama was ahead 10-7 before the first half. We marched down. We got to the 1-yard line, and we couldn't force it in. And I just been reading my diary. Jay Wallens, remember him, Pat? He was a kicker. Jay Wallens comes in and misses a 1-yard field goal.
Oh gosh!
It clanks off the goalpost from 1 yard. So I didn't remember that play at all.
That's right. I didn't remember that either, but I can see it now. Clang, bang.
So maybe you didn't feel like you had all the momentum going into halftime after that.
So anyway, we were. It didn't bother us because I think Jay Wallens missed a lot of field goals. It didn't really kill the momentum.
Was he the field goal kicker at Navy or was that? We're up at Navy. There's a 50-knot wind blowing in our faces. We go to kick a field goal, and the ball goes up, and it goes straight up in the air and lands on the 50.
Oh my God!
That's a lost in history. That's a great memory from
my God,
football that nobody remembers.
It was unbelievable. We said, what? Good kick, straight. Ernie Perez.
Ernie Perez.
A backwards field goal.
And it goes backwards. It landed on the 50. It was like it was a gimme. It was a gimme, but it was a 50-knot wind.
Then, Toomay, on the other hand, somebody on the other end of the field, somebody kicked an extra point, and it went over the ticket off out of the stadium.
That's right.
35-35 tie in Annapolis.
That's right. That's right.
That's right. So anyway, Andrew, back to your question.
It's going to be my most important job in this interview is reeling you guys back in.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, the game. There were so many parallels to this last Saturday. One was early momentum that carried through the game. Well, when we played Alabama, we held them the first series we held. They punted, and the ball hit the ground. Neil Smith picks it up and goes 85 yards for a touchdown.
That's right.
The stadium goes nuts.
Right.
Everybody's shocked. And then Bear Bryant walks out on the field and talks to the official and said, Doug Matthews over there called for a fair catch. So they called it back. But that momentum carried throughout the game, and it lifted us like, we've got this. So we went back and forth and back and forth. Now, the interesting other thing is when you watch the Vanderbilt game from this Saturday, the execution was phenomenal. Everybody fired off the same time, no penalties, very few.
Amazing.
And it was amazing because if you look at the 69 game, the line of scrimmage fires off. I mean, it's like you drew it up on a chalkboard, the way it's supposed to be done. I never understood why we couldn't duplicate that ever again before, but that night we were on top of it. And so as we went back and forth, somewhere in the fourth quarter, they were driving, we couldn't, maybe Jay Wallens missed another field goal. I don't know. But we were still behind, and they were marching down to, our 10-yard line or whatever, going to put the game away. And Scott Hunter sprints out left, and then he throws back into the end zone. And I was covering the middle of the end zone, so I'm sort of right between the crossbars. And he throws the ball like to me. It was like he threw me a pass. Right. And it was like, whoa. Right. So I caught the ball, and then I looked because he had sprinted out left. I was heading right, and I looked, and there was a wide open field. There was not a player to be seen. Right. And I took off out of the end zone, and I promise you, in my head, I went, cover of Sports Illustrated.
As we're running?
I'm going to go 110 cover of Sports Illustrated. I got to the 8-yard line, and I saw a glimpse of the red helmet. So I planted and cut into the field to cut across. And Alvin Samples had been coming 100 miles an hour. He hit me. That's the red helmet I saw. He hit me, and I launched airborne into the cinder track that we had. Was momentarily stunned, and and I got up, and here's a great end of the story is I went back to the sidelines, and I had the ball, and our friend Bob Bundy, who had graduated a year earlier, had signed with the Atlanta Hawks. He got cut, and he came back through Nashville that weekend, and he went to the game. He's standing on the sidelines with us because we were all friends. I said, Bob, keep this ball. So he kept the ball, and then we end up winning the game. We all go out and party till,
Well, that's what I was going to say. After that game, the
but
party went on all the way till Monday.
Here's the punchline.
Tuesday,
when we all went out and got hammered. We all just partied.
Oh, it was unbelievable.
Yeah. And then, so I forgot about the ball. 3 years ago, Bob Bundy calls me and says, Christie, I found this football that you gave me
No way.
years ago, 52 years later, of which he returned, and may he rest in peace. He's no longer with us. But
he kept it all those years. Wow. But
then
you
we
made
get
it
the ball
92 yards?
Then the drive after that, Denny Painter, he threw like 4 long passes.
Right.
Watson comes in and throws one to win the game.
That's right.
So,
West End Denny Painter.
So when you say you made it to the 8-yard line, did you make it 8 yards out of the end zone or 92 yards out of the end zone?
No, I made it 8 yards. They got pummeled out of bounds.
Okay.
Launched.
And Pat, it sounds like you remember the post-game celebration pretty well, which, on Saturday, everyone around the world knows, I think, now that they carried the goalpost and dumped it in the Cumberland River. What was the post-game like after the 69 game from the players' perspective?
Well, a lot of us, some of us were in fraternities, but the campus was just aglow, and there were parties everywhere, and a lot of it got pretty sloppy. The SAE house, but every fraternity house had parties, and what I remember is going from house to house to house to house, and having a great time, and it went on the next day,
And Christie, I didn't know that you kept a diary back then. Do you have it with you? And what did you write about what that game meant? What did you say about it at the time?
Well, let's see. We got time. Some of the things we've already talked about, but I think the interesting thing might be, give me a second here, as we didn't think we had a chance, for one thing,
right,
because the way we played it the week before. I think I mentioned we put in a new defense for Scott Hunter, and after the game, they tried to tear the goalpost down, but couldn't do it.
Right.
So we've improved on that over the last
right.
How come we couldn't tear it down? Where were the engineering students when we needed them?
And yet Bear in the post-game presser called it the low point in Alabama history. He was he had coached at Vanderbilt.
Right.
Yeah. And so that was for him to stand up and say that was insulting on one level.
Yeah.
Tremendous on another level.
Right. Exactly.
Everywhere you went, people were hugging you.
Oh, yeah.
And offering you drinks.
Yes.
Really super. So we're now tied for the SEC lead. How about that?
All right.
Here's one in Opelika, Alabama. They stopped the movie theater and announced our victory. So they shut down the movie house to announce the win. And the KA house at Auburn was ripped apart upon the news. We did more for Auburn than anybody.
You could kind of feel that this weekend also, that there were a
That's
lot of
right.
people cheering for Vandy.
Yeah, right.
Pat, you played in Super Bowls and a lot of big games in the NFL. Where does a big college victory and just the feeling you had that day or that night rank among your highlights of your football career?
Well, it was huge because it was such an upset, and so there it sits. Uh, as you move on in the game, things get more complicated. You know, it was a very clean night. I mean, the whole thing was a high that I would say wasn't repeated really. When you you win a Super Bowl, that's great and all that, but you know, the seasons are long. It's a relief to get out of a season. And if you contribute, and, you know, we had Leroy Jordan, we had some Alabama guys down there. It was all great, and we partied and had a good time. But you stay out there. I was 10 years in the league, and so you know, there are a lot of complications in that period, injuries. They're big wins and all that. But the moments we're talking about, you know, it's right up there with everything else.
Yeah.
It really is.
And Christie, how about you? You didn't play in the NFL. I mean, was this when you picture that interception, like, can you still see it like it was yesterday? And I know you've had kids and grandkids, but like, where does this memory rank in, like, when you reflect on everything in your life?
Well, I would call it the greatest sports thrill of a career in football. It was a phenomenal.
Wait, Christie, didn't you go up and play for the Firebirds?
I got drafted by the Pottstown Firebirds.
I meant
First, well, I was told when back then, the draft, they would call you and say, "Hey, sit by your phone."
Right.
The Baltimore Colts called and said, "We're going to draft you, so sit by your phone." Well, evidently, I gave them the wrong number because the phone never rang. But the next week, I got a letter from the Pottstown, Pennsylvania Firebirds.
What league were they in?
So we know you
the World Football League, wasn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
But we will get you a job in the steel mill
right
during the day, and we practice at night. When would you like to report? I failed the physical, or I didn't respond. Whatever, but I didn't go to Pottstown. Thank you, Pat Toomay, for reminding me.
Man, that's a far cry from NIL these days, I guess, where you're taking jobs in steel mill. Well, Christie, back to Saturday's game. Like, when we first got started, you said that was the greatest moment. What's it like to, you know, I guess as you get older, maybe you want to see other people succeed in a way, but like, you had your moment. What did it mean for you to see these kids on the team now have their moment like this?
I was very excited. Personally, I was very relieved because I'm so tired of telling a story about 1969 that it's about time something happened to retire that, to take its place.
Change the narrative.
Right. So it's personal relief, but the joy, I mean, those kids, you know, we've stumbled through the Georgia State game was like this horrible nightmare returning, and the Missouri game, you know, they woulda, shoulda, coulda won. And then, you know, I didn't expect us to play. I kept waiting the whole game for the other shoe to drop because this can't maintain itself.
Yeah, that's how. That's what I was feeling too, listening and watching the. Yeah, I thought, no, come on, you know. But I hadn't seen Pavia I'd heard of him here in New Mexico, but I hadn't seen him, and apparently this guy is the real deal.
Yeah. I mean, he's
He's all-
very, I've never seen this type of like, to me, it reminds me of when you have like a really talented and confident point guard who can just take a
Exactly.
team on his shoulders, and it seems
Exactly.
like that. And to me, that seems unusual for football. But and then Clark has very methodically built a program where these guys, it wasn't just riding a wave of emotion. Like that was what was so impressive to me in watching the game also is that we were running the ball right up the gut against them, and converting third down after third down.
Yeah.
They were the ones with costly penalties and turnovers. Like it was a very solid,
Right.
clear, better team won the game.
Right.
It's the way I felt. Um, well, when you guys just seeing you two talk and the bonds that you form with your teammates, I know regardless of what the
Yeah.
outcomes over the games are, last forever, but you guys participated in a momentous game. I'm sure that adds to it. But Pat, you played, like you said, a decade in the NFL. What is your I guess brotherhood could be a word you use with your Vanderbilt teammates. What has that meant to you over the years?
Well, I don't. If I lived in Nashville like Christie does, I think it would be a different. I think it would be a different situation. But
Hmm.
I'm in New Mexico. There's no, there's nobody here.
Yeah.
But my
But you've
kids,
been back. Yeah.
right? I've been back, and my kids and grandkids are in Dallas. And when I go over to see them, I always see Cliff Harris. I always see former teammates that we get together and recall the good old days. Uh, but traveling for me now is becoming problematic because of I know numerous knee surgeries and the physical cost of doing that activity for a long time
Yeah,
is it's there and there's no getting around it. So I have to deal with that
for
all the
sure.
time. Yeah. Uh, but
And
would I trade a day? Would I trade any of it? No. You know, it is what it is. There's a cost.
yeah.
It is, I wouldn't trade it, any of it.
Mm. Christy, you are here in Nashville. I know you gather with the group at Stony River, former players. You've done many things in your life, started multiple businesses. This was a period of your life when you were late teens, early 20s. But how much does it still mean to you now? And what do you think those conversations will be like the next time you guys get together at Stony River?
Well, we've moved, Andrew. We don't meet at Stony River anymore.
Okay. Where do you guys
We're
meet
at the
now?
Hilton in Green Hills. Come
Oh,
on
the
down.
Hilton. All right, we'll give them a shout out.
Um, well, the bond you make, I mean, I still feel like Pat and I are in the locker room together. I mean, he's in New Mexico, but all the memories are there and all of the friends, the old friends. It's just like when you see them, it's just like it was yesterday and you catch right up. But I think you ought to get Pat to tell this wonderful story when he came a few years ago and we had a reunion of sorts, and then we went to see Ray Wiley Hubbard.
Right.
And
That's
I let hand the baton
right.
off to Pat. This is a great story. So take it away, Pat.
But what do you want me to tell?
Well, at the theater, first of all, your relationship with this Texas troubadour named Ray Wiley Hubbard is one thing, who is a great musician, kind of like Willie Nelson Jr. But Pat knew him, and we went to the show after a Vanderbilt football game, and Ray Wiley he stopped the performance.
He stopped the performance. That's right. I forgot that. It was in Green Hills, the theater down there.
Franklin Theater.
Franklin Theater.
Oh, wow. All right.
And when I went down to Texas, I started hanging out, and music was always a big thing for us, as Christy can attest, through school. We'd have tunes every Thursday night. It went from midnight to 2 a.m. It was Jimi Hendrix and everything. The Doors, and it was great fun. And it's how we stayed loose during the season. We after the hump day, we would go do that. And I went down to Dallas and started going to a little folk club down there called the Rubaiyat. And this guy came in, and it was Ray, and he had a song called "Up Against the Wall, Redneck Mother." It was frigging hilarious. And he had a sense of humor, and he had a narrative. He's like an old bard going around singing these songs, and we became friends, and then that carried on and on. And he did. He's on Letterman. You can find him if you look up Dave Letterman. You'll find him, and he did a performance there, and it was just fun. It was a lot of fun knowing Ray, and we're still in touch. And he's as old as we are, and he's still out there doing it. With his son and everything else. So he comes to New Mexico infrequently, but often, really. And we see each other and remember those days.
So you guys went to go see him perform after this game, and he stopped the show to do what?
No, Ray Wiley, well, we went to see him before the performance because Pat went into the green room.
Right.
Pat knew him, introduced us to he and his family, and then we went and sat and watched the performance. But halfway through, he said, "Turn the house lights on. I have an announcement to make."
That's right.
And Pat, do you want to take it, or you want me to?
Okay, go.
So he said, and this is how ironic it was. He said, on this exact day, 50 years ago, I think it was just 4 years ago, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
50 years ago, this night, Vanderbilt beat the University of Alabama and Bear Bryant. I mean, this is halfway through his rocking performance. Everybody's having a great time. And he just shuts the show down to announce. And then he says, and there are people in the audience with us that played in that game. Stand up, you guys. And it was Pat, myself, and Dave Strong. We stand up in the middle of a Ray Wiley Hubbard concert.
And everybody goes crazy.
And then, he talks a little more about it. Then he goes back to playing. And then afterwards, we all got rushed for autographs and stuff from the people in the audience.
Bobby, that's right, Steve.
That was the last ever autograph we'll ever sign. It was a great memory.
Amazing. Just a few years ago. So maybe in the year 2074, somebody will stop a concert and recognize Diego and everybody else from the team on Saturday.
Andrew, go to YouTube and click Ray Wiley Hubbard does David Letterman, and then you'll get the whole gestalt of him and his music and why we love him so much.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I'll do it. Well, guys, thank you. This has been really fun to remember the 1969 win over Alabama and the connections to the 2024 win. I was there with my daughter who's 14, and we were among the people that after the Alabama players left the field, we went down on the field, and she got a bunch of pictures with players. We watched the students tear down the goalpost. I spent all night watching my Twitter and other social media to see the progression of the goalpost all the way down to the river. And then to see the way that a lot of people around the country kind of were cheering for Vandy and identified with that game. It was really cool to see. And a moment that I feel like a lot of Vanderbilt fans deserved. I saw a lot of tears and down on the field that night. So very cool. And I'm sure you guys brought those same feelings to people back in the stadium in 1969. So thank you for joining the show and for being an important part of Vanderbilt history. Christie, you got one last thing to say?
Yes, for people like Pat who didn't see the game, Andrew, which I emailed you about, there ought to be a disc or something. I don't know what form the current, but some way to see that game again through. You guys need to
There
set
must be
Yeah.
footage. Yeah.
a thumb drive, something.
That's right. Well, I'm sure there's something in the works. I'll find out. But since we're like on a podcast here, I don't know what to say exactly, but I think it's going to happen.
All
Yeah.
right.
All right.
Christie, good to see you. Andrew,
You
always a
too.
pleasure.
You too,
Thanks,
man.
Andrew.